Let's just say you are the PM of Canada. Let's just play this let's just say game, okay? And you watch the decisions Justin made. He's your PM. You live in that country. How he handled truckers, how he handled vaccine, how he handled lockdowns, how he handled everything. How would you have handled some of those things if you were the PM of Canada?
Well, I'd have to say that I don't know, because those decisions are extremely complicated, and it's very hard to speculate. I do have something to say about that, though, that I think is relevant. When I watch Mr. Trudeau through the lenses that I've developed over the years, I see someone who never, ever says a true word. And so I've met lots of people like that. They're all persona, and everything they do is crafted in a sense to obtain what they think is appropriate in the situation, whatever that might be. It's all instrumentality. And so when Mr. Trudeau comes out and addresses his audiences, it's all a game. It's all an act, all of it. And so what I would hope I would have done differently if I was in that position is I would have said what I thought and hope that I always think that's the way that carries the day. It doesn't mean you're right, because what the hell do you know? But at least it means you're engaging in the process that might make you right if you opened up your eyes and your ears and listened, right? And so what to do isn't, in a complex situation, in some sense, isn't as important as how you do it, right? What approach do you take when the chips are down and things are tense? The good politicians that I've met, and this is relevant to this, they listen. They go out among their people, actually go out, and they listen to them. And that way they learn what to do. And that's not opinion polls. Opinion polls are, and my country and yours to a large degree, is ruled by opinion polls to a degree you can't possibly imagine, because the politicians won't take responsibility for saying what they think, and so then they default to their handlers, and their handlers rely on opinion polls, and opinion polls provide a bad short-term sample of people's careless thoughts. And you think, well, you're following the public. No, you're not. The entire parliamentary system is set up to follow the public in an intelligent way. It's not easy to figure out what people think or what they want. It isn't even easy for individuals to figure out what they themselves think or want. It's really hard. And these traditions that we've set up of representative democracy are ways of listening to the people that are measured and thoughtful and long-term, and they're being supplanted by idiot opinion polls that are run by people who have instrumental desires. They want to win the next election. And I know you have to win the damn next election, but pandering to a mob who's frightened because you scared them, that doesn't constitute leadership. It's certainly not democracy. There's a reason we don't have direct democracy. There's a reason for that. It's like rule by impulse. It's not a good structure. It's not a good strategy. We figured that out a long time ago. Our organizations are way too large and complex for anything like direct democracy to work. We're going to have a vote on every issue? Like, obviously not. People just don't have the expertise for that. And it's not like they shouldn't be consulted. They absolutely should be. The voice of the people is the sovereign master of the political enterprise. But what a leader does is aggregate that voice. I'll give you an example. This is a good example.
What a leader does is aggregate that voice.
Yes. Collects it. So I interviewed Jimmy Carr, the British comedian. He's very, very smart, Carr. And I asked him how he did what he did. And I kind of knew this from other comedians I've talked to. He said, the comedy, stand-up comedy, is the most dialogical of all the artistic enterprises. I thought, well, what do you mean by that? Because you have a monologue. What do you mean it's dialogical? And he said, well, before I go out on a tour, and he's had a couple of successful world tours, so that's pretty good when you're that funny. That's amazing. He said he'd go out and do 100 shows. Rogan does the same thing. All the comedians do the same thing. Louis C.K. does this. They all do it. They go to small clubs and they try out their material. So they're sitting at home trying to be funny, and sometimes they are and sometimes they're not. And then they go to an audience and they lay out some jokes. And sometimes people laugh a lot and sometimes they don't. And so the comedians who do this repeatedly listen, and then they collect all the things that people think are funny. And so isn't it so cool is that you don't even have to be that funny in some sense to be a comedian. You have to be a little bit funny, and then you really have to listen. And so if you go out to your audience and you tell them jokes and they tell you what's funny, then you can collect all the things that everyone thinks is funny, and then you can go on a world tour and just say things that everyone thinks are funny.
Exactly.
It's so cool. That's the pathway to that.
Hence, aggregate.
Exactly. So when the comedians are doing what a political leader who is functioning properly does, they're doing exactly the same thing. I talked at length to a Canadian politician, Preston Manning. He's on the right of the political spectrum, and he built a political party from scratch in Canada and became the leader of the opposition, which is no trivial thing to do in the span of a single lifetime, or even in the fraction of a career, which is what he did. And he told me that what he really liked was going out to make a speech, but that wasn't the part he really liked. He really liked the question period, because people would just tell him what they were concerned about, and then he derived the policies for his party as a consequence of addressing those concerns. So it was really a bottom-up enterprise. And so I would hope that had I been in that position, I would do what I'm doing when I'm on my tour, which is watching people and listening to them and then responding. And this happens, first of all, when I lecture, which isn't exactly the right word. When I explore ideas in front of people, I'm watching them like a hawk, blinded as I am by the lights, But I'm watching to see if people are following and modifying what I'm saying to make sure that everybody's staying on the track. And then I have thousands of people. I have had thousands of people meet me in meet and greets after the talks and then on the street. And I always listen to them. And so then I can address those concerns. And then that keeps the situation dynamic, right? And so in the UK, in the House of Parliament, there's this great dome at the center of the building, and it's the lobby. And that's where the word lobbyist comes from, by the way. And the citizens of the UK have the right to enter the lobby and petition their member of Parliament at any time, essentially. And so the lobby is where the voice of the people meets the voice of their representatives, and it's the center of the British House of Parliament, and it's built that way architecturally, which is so brilliant. It's stunningly brilliant, the way that that's laid out. And that's exactly right, because the people are somewhat inarticulate, like the truckers. Like, they're not making an argument in some sense. They're bringing their trucks to Ottawa. Right?
They're showing, not telling.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And people who aren't primarily intellectual, let's say, they have to act out their moral presuppositions in a more concrete manner. But that doesn't mean they're wrong at all. It doesn't mean that at all. And so then the job of a leader is to note that inarticulate expression and to give it voice publicly in speeches, let's say, but also to have that voice manifest itself in the body of laws that governs all of us. That's how the system works. And so, and the alternative is to dismiss that. And that's not a good alternative. Or to demonize it.
So if you enjoyed this little short segment from the podcast that we did, here's another short segment to watch. Or if you want to see the entire podcast, click over here. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.